video, we're going to discuss everything to do with fat loss. So we're going to go over training and nutrition and supplementation, explaining exactly the importance of each and how important exactly each of them are. Right off the bat, you're going to see, obviously this is just arbitrary numbers, but just so you have a general idea of what your mentality should be and how your focus should be when you're going into your fat loss phase. Your supplementation is going to be pretty much responsible for 2% of your fat loss progress, unless you're using anabolic steroids or any other specific compounds. Anything over the counter, it's going to be responsible for 2% max of your fat loss progress. Nutrition is going to come down to obviously the huge bulk of it, 68%, and the training is going to be around 30%. So this is going to be making up your entire progress for your fat loss. And just to go into more detail, so with your nutrition, we're going to spend the majority of this video going over the nutrition. Before I go into more detail on exactly what your nutrition should look like for fat loss, I want to let you guys know that my phone completely shattered. So my phone smashed. I was doing cardio yesterday on the treadmill, and I was posting on Meals with Anthony. I was doing posts on Instagram. So I was doing my low intensity steady state cardio. I was trying to do a post. I dropped my phone on the treadmill. It was sliding on the belt, and then it got caught around the corner and just completely chomped it. So my phone is completely out of use. I'm using my dad's phone, and I'm using my dad's old backup phone just to go live on Instagram and live on Facebook right now. So that's how we're recording this. I'm not gonna have a phone for another day or two. If you ever need to contact me, you can message me on Instagram. I haven't checked them yet. I'm logged into my dad's phone on Instagram, so I can check the replies and get back to you. But best point of contact, if you want to get in contact with me over the next 2 days, then email me at advphysique@gmail.com or message me on Facebook. All right, continuing on. Also, got a nice haircut, got a fade. Went to Studio 5, David cut my hair. First time I ever got a fade short like that. And I'm also trying to grow some facial hair, as you can see. All right, now that's out of the way. For your nutrition, you're gonna want to optimize your peri-workout nutrition. So what you're gonna want to do is make sure majority of your carbohydrates are in the pre, intra, and post-workout setting. So you wanna have a majority of your carbs in those meals. Doesn't matter how many meals you consume throughout the day. What matters is how many calories you're consuming throughout the day. So you need to figure out how many calories you need to consume to be in a caloric deficit, which means you're eating less calories than your body needs to be burning that body fat. That's how you lose body fat. Now, to make sure you don't lose muscle, that's another story. You need to optimize your nutrition in different ways and your training as well. Training is a huge factor. Training plays a huge factor in how much muscle you retain when you're in a fat loss phase. So for your nutrition, set your calories first. When you know how many calories you need to consume, if you don't know, you can refer to my previous videos and I can tell you all about that. Lots of videos on YouTube, lots of videos on Instagram, or you can just shoot me a message and I can help you out. Once you know your calories, you want to set your macros. I also have videos on how to set your macros. I'm not going to explain that here. I've talked about that plenty of times. You can check out those videos or message me. When you have your macros set, what's next is the meal timing. So you want to figure out when you're going to be training throughout the day, and you want to prioritize your nutrition around that. So you want to be consuming fats, proteins, and carbs in different ratios depending on the time of day and depending on when you train. More details on that, search my videos or ask me a question. For your training, this is very important. Now with fat loss, a lot of people think you need to be having higher repetitions and doing a lot of sets to failure. It can be further from the truth. You want to have less sets to failure, and you want to have less high rep sets. So when you're training in fat loss, you really need to prioritize your strength. So it really comes down to how much strength you're retaining, and you want to be hitting those numbers. You want to be losing the fat through your nutrition. You don't want to try to train to create the caloric deficit. You want to create the caloric deficit primarily through your nutrition and just use your training to retain the muscle mass and retain your gym performance. You don't want to be doing a bunch of sets to burn more calories, because if you burn more calories, you're just going to be eating away at your muscle. That's a common misconception. You can do high intensity interval training in your training to burn more fat for fuel. Honestly, I really find that high intensity interval training is too taxing in a caloric deficit, because when you're doing high intensity interval training, it takes away from your recovery for your compound movements, your heavier movements, when you're using those movements to retain your muscle. So I really actually limit the amount of high intensity interval training that I use with my clients. I don't use much high intensity interval training, especially for people who are contest prepping. It's far too taxing and they can't put in enough energy into their lifting. So if you're in a caloric surplus, I highly recommend you use high intensity interval training to keep yourself responding well to the nutrients and keep off the fat gain. When you're in a fat loss phase, I like to prioritize low intensity steady state, something like a speed walk or just a consistent rate on a Stairmaster, stair climber, or if someone prefers the bike, then the bike. But my two primary cardio tools are the Stairmaster or the incline walk on the treadmill. Fantastic to listen to an audiobook as well. Don't have to listen to music if you don't learn at the same time. That's what I always do. I love using low intensity steady state at 30 to 60 minutes a session so I can get my learning in. So I love multitasking. I can't stand wasting time. So I like to be productive, especially when I'm doing my cardio. So it's a perfect time to throw on an audiobook, listen to podcasts, whatever you guys like to listen to. Just, use something for educational purposes. Training comes down to lower rep sets, higher weight, more rest periods, tracking your training so you're making sure you're hitting those numbers on a weekly basis. For your supplementation, moving on to supplementation, we can see it's 2%, we're not going to spend much time here. Only thing you need to use for fat loss is creatine monohydrate. That's it. Use creatine monohydrate. It's going to help maintain your gym performance and your strength. That's all you need. You can use whey protein for convenience, but I find personally whey protein, when your calories get low, whey protein is not filling enough, and it's a turnoff because you'll have some whey protein, whether it's a shake, wherever you use it, it's not filling. So I like to use whole foods. Pretty much the lower my calories get, the more I rely on whole foods and vegetables. And that's just to keep my appetite full, so I'm not hungry all the time. I'm using more high volume foods. I'm relying less on processed foods. I typically don't really consume much processed foods as well, or advocate that my clients do as well, unless they're in a gaining phase where you need to get those calories in. For fat loss, huge advocate of using frozen vegetables, frozen mixed vegetables. One, they taste a lot better because you get a mix of different vegetables, better nutrition profile. Yes, they're frozen, yes, they're not raw, no problem. I don't mind too much. I microwave them. I haven't looked into thinking that microwaving my vegetables is going to really take away from the nutrition. And I don't think the microwave is going to give me cancer. So I microwave my foods. I know a lot of people don't like that for those reasons. But when you really think about it, everything gives you cancer. So yeah. The fact that you're training is you're much healthier than 90% of the population. So don't worry about the little things. That's what I always think about. So again, huge focus on your nutrition. You want to focus on the nutrition, the nutrient timing. You want to make sure you're drinking enough fluid throughout the day. Most of us are dehydrated, quite frankly. So in a fat loss phase, you're actually going to find you're going to need to drink even more water. One, to keep yourself satisfied, you're not hungry all the time. And two, to keep yourself hydrated and nourished. If you are 2%, just 2% less hydrated than you should be, then your performance can be impaired. Just 2%. So for example, if your body is made up of 73% water and you're at 71% water, your performance is going to be impaired. That's what I mean by 2% less. So ideally, you want to be drinking at least 4 liters a day. If you're a woman, then 3 liters a day minimum. I typically drink 6 liters a day. The lower my calories get, the higher my water intake gets naturally, because I find like I'm reaching for water more, so I'm not always hungry. So when my calories get low, usually below under 2,000 calories, then my water intake gets up to the 8 to 9 liters, sometimes 10 liters a day. But right now it's about 6 liters a day. And yeah, that's the huge just for the training. So what's key with fat loss is you need to make sure, you need to know when it's time for a deload. You also need to know when it's time for a refeed. That's when a coach really comes into play, and that's where a coach can really help you out and make sure that you're not just continuously trying to push so hard, because you can only push so hard without a deload or without a refeed. Whenever you're trying to lose body fat, it's not just a downhill approach. You want to have some spikes, you want to have some valleys. It's totally normal to be going up and down in weigh-ins and progress. You want to make sure that you're giving your body adequate rest so that we can keep pushing for the long term. If you just keep going downhill, you're gonna end up crashing. You could end up to have some hormonal issues for months afterwards, and you don't want that, clearly. So what you're gonna wanna do is make sure you take those deloads when you need those deloads. Deloads can be done in various ways. You can use a deload to just do half the training volume you typically do for 1 week, or what you can do is keep the same training volume but lower the weights 50%. You can do either. I use both with clients. You can even take 3 days completely off of no cardio, no training, or you can do a full week off of no cardio, no training. I don't use that one typically. I typically either drop the training volume or move away from failure, or I'll just have my clients take like 2 or 3 full days off of training and cardio. For your refeed days, this can be every 7 days, it can be every 3 to 4 days, so twice a week, or it can be every 2 weeks. It can really be anything. It totally depends on the client, depends on their goals, depends on their lifestyle, depends on how they're doing psychologically, depends how they're doing their life stressors, depends on a lot of things. But you as a coach, or whoever the coach is, needs to be able to know the client and know what's best for the client. Now, refeed days are more so for the psychological release. Also can be great for putting your hormones at bay. So whenever you're in a fat loss phase, your cortisol is going to be continuously spiked for being stressed in the training and the cardio, and having the stress of under eating and overtraining. You are overtraining in a fat loss phase because you are eating less calories than your body needs. So you do need to pull back sometimes and have some refeeds where you're eating more carbohydrates than your body is typically having. You can do this by bumping your intake back up to maintenance, or you can bump it up to a few hundred calories above maintenance. Typically I like to do this by adding more carbohydrates. I won't really add much to protein or fat. Typically, I actually pull back on the fats and up the carbs to compensate, so it's not a huge addition of calories. That's how you can adjust it in that sense. But that pretty much covers the basis, guys. I wanted to talk exactly how we can structure your nutrition, training, and your supplementation to optimize your fat loss. I wanted to dispel some myths. I don't want people to be believing that you need to be doing a lot of high rep sets, low rest periods. You don't need to do that, guys. You want to actually probably lengthen your rest periods just so you can get that same training volume in that you were typically getting throughout your training when you're in a surplus. So the main goal is to prioritize your training, back off on some training volume, hit those numbers. So you want to have some strict numbers for your strength. Focus on retaining strength in your fat loss phase and using your nutrition to create a caloric deficit. Don't focus on overtraining so much, doing a bunch of fluff work as in a bunch of extra sets that are unnecessary, sets taken to failure, drop sets, supersets, giant sets. That's the fluff work. That's the work that gives you that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. And that's responsible for just, not as much of the hypertrophy as the heavier lifting does. So that's what I mean by fluff work. And then supplementation, all you really need is creatine monohydrate. It's very cheap, very affordable, 5 grams every single day. No problems there. Haven't seen any studies, long-term studies saying that there's any issues there. And that's about it, guys, for supplementation. You don't really need anything else. You could include health supplements. Obviously, if you have any health concerns, you can add in your own things. Of course, you can take a vitamin C just for your, just so you're not getting sick as much. And you could take a multivitamin to cover your bases, but all you really need is a creatine monohydrate. So if you guys have any questions about this, just shoot me a message either on Facebook, Instagram, or email. If you need any help with your nutrition or your training, again, just shoot me a message. I'd love to help you out. No problems there. And if you have any considerations, if there's anything you want me to talk about in any further videos, then just let me know. Again, message me on any platform, and I'd love to help you out, guys. So that concludes the videos, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, enjoy your weekends, and I'm out.